Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank Podcast. Esteemed author Bart Kamp is joining me today. Welcome, Bart. You're looking fresh. You got the button up. You got a headset too. About time. Got some of that book money going out there, huh?
Uh, Greetings, everyone. Thank you for having me, Robbie. I know it's one of the last ones. I think what you've done is quite an achievement. Close to 1,500 recordings. That's just mental. You know, normal person does this over, I don't know, 10 years, but you just take the piss and just do it within what, 2 or 3, something like that.
Five.
5.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's still half
Well,
of
let's,
what it
hang on a
normally
second.
would be.
This isn't my interview. This is your interview. You created. You got your book finally out, man. I mean, how much work that you put a lot of. First of all, I think everyone should be thanking you for the amount of work you have done with the Malcom Blunt archives. That
You're
was
welcome.
insane.
Yeah, it was is actually small secret, not anymore, but there's still a little bit left. Not a lot, but a little bit. I did one bag about 2, 3 weeks ago. Malcolm's semi-retired, so I saw him last in May, and I did two 1-hour interviews with him then. We've exchanged a few emails, but it's been relatively quiet, and I just took my time with doing the files that were in there. And it was so funny because I pointed at a cabinet there that he had, and he went, "Oh, no, that's just junk," and all kinds of other stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I just had a quick look at it, and I was like, yeah, well, your junk might be someone else's treasure. So I took it out there, checked a few riff numbers, and went, "Oh, that's not online. That's not online. Oh, no, that doesn't exist either." So I filled a big bag filled with documentation, took them home, and some boxes as well, really nice boxes with archival. Let me see if I can pull it out.
Imagine if one of those says like who did it on it, and you're like,
So
damn,
it's a box like this.
damn. It went
Damn.
blurry as soon as you showed it up on screen.
Yeah, in front of my,
It's the presidential seal. They won't let you get it.
yeah. National Archives of the United States. And then, so basically the whole box is filled with paper as such.
Yeah.
We've got two of them, and then the rest of the bag is filled with loose stuff. And it's all, I'd say 80, 90% of it I couldn't find online. So, I scanned it all in. So, and there's a little bit more left. But after that reorganization starts, you see, when I started with that thing, I was only supposed to last about 4 or 5 months because all the stuff was going to be shipped to the States. And that didn't happen because all of a sudden I started to digitize it. And then I I was on one location where he had about 25 file cabinets, 4 drawer cabinets. So these are deep drawers as well. Real typical filing system cabinets, old school. And they were
Like,
filled up to the brim.
is
And
it
that was just
is it like the filing cabinet from Bruce Almighty where he pulls it and then it flies back like 1,000 feet and hits the wall?
no, not that bad, but it is something that when you pull it out, that's about 3 feet. You pull it out and boom, that's what you get. 3 feet of documentation, folders with documentation inside. So four drawers times 25, so it's 100 drawers. So and there's what 3 feet. So it's what 300 feet of paper basically, roughly. And that was only just Malcolm's stuff because I did Harry Livingston's material as well, and I didn't do everything of that, but I did more than half. So it was about close to 20 cases, crates that were filled with folders that I digitized as well. Um, in the beginning, speed was king because I didn't know how long access I had to it. So I'm gonna have to redo a couple of things, not a lot, but a couple of things in haste got mucked up, so that needs to be sorted out. On top of that, I need to regarding the object character recognition element needs to be sorted out as well because that's key to the whole thing with the archives. Once that's done, it's just a matter of uploading and waving it off
So
as perfect and holy.
the book is not the final send off for your JFK work. You're going to keep going with some
No,
things.
I thought that, you know what, here's the thing. It was the archive was a lot of work and it delayed me, but it delayed me for a good reason because the quality of the material. I mean, I can tell you now that I don't know if I said this back in April when we spoke, or was it March? And when we spoke last, so that was 6 months ago, yeah. I basically found out that there was absolutely no evidence whatsoever to tie Oswald to the rifle at the alleged time of his arraignment for the murder of JFK. They had absolutely nothing on him. And that I found out by basically having to research more. When I released my papers last year in June 22, then Malcom, this was just like a week before I was releasing him to everyone, and he went, Malcolm went, yeah, you should do a book. And I was like, oh, your timing is impeccable, mate. Thank you very much. I'm just releasing these papers, and you're telling me to do a book now. But it got me interested because I started to think right away, like, what do I need to do to turn this into a book? Because they're now just four scriptures, and but I like the format of them because I included all the evidence in them. So you were just scrolling down the page. I'll talk to you about a document such and such says this and this in this document. And then it's not even, you don't even have to click on it. It's right there. You scroll down and it's right there in front of you. The evidence is right there. So, you know, you can't argue against the evidence unless you have other evidence that says so. But otherwise, that's it. So that was my prerogative with that, doing that. Then when the book came, I realized that I had to add some bits to it. And this is when I started to focus on the fingerprints and I focused on the palm prints and the nitrate test. And then earlier this year, I started to, like Christmas or just after, I started to focus on Oswald and the youth house 10 years before he, in 1953, when he was in New York. And that was basically of interest because of like, well, who is this guy? What do these psychiatrists say about Oswald as such and such? And I thought, well, in relation to the interrogations, I think that's quite important because they describe what kind of person he is. It's 10 years prior, but still they, there might be some valuable stuff in there. So I did that. Also, once again, just purely thanks to the Malcom Blunt archive because I just found a 30-page document and that by itself was already like an absolute whopper. Although the quality was dreadful, some of the pages, but I just managed to decipher certain really important bits. And so that was just vital. And then I was like, okay, so what am I going to do now with the book? And then I just basically put it together. But when I started putting it together, the whole thing about the Heidel ID related to the rifle and the fingerprints and so forth became a whole secondary finding because I just added these bits to it already, like where they destroyed his alibi, for instance. That was already known. The second floor lunchroom was a total lunchroom encounter was a total fugazi. Again, also was just dealt with. And so that as a surprise, the whole thing with not having anything to tie Oswald to the rifle, because the fingerprints, in a nutshell, the fingerprints were picked up by the FBI. And the Dallas police gave the FBI all the fingerprints they had of Oswald and also the palm prints as such. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when Oswald is after his press conference, is taken upstairs and has his mugshots taken and all that, that's when he gets fingerprinted again by the Dallas police. So there is a period of basically not long, but there's a period that they don't have the fingerprints. So the fingerprints supposedly tying him to the rifle or the palm print and tying him to the rifle were gone. Okay. They weren't in the possession. And those fingerprints, this is another thing, they weren't found, or palm prints weren't found again until like at the time of the HSCA. They disappeared for 15, 16 years. Some FBI clerk went through the archives and found them by accident. So you know, that's the beauty of the Blunt archives, the detail and the dots on the eyes I've managed to put on. You know, I had a decent story together back in
Yeah.
2018, 2019, but not with this archive, with the documentation that comes with it. Stupendous. It's just the detail, and it allowed me basically just to figure out like what the hell happened actually? Who did what? Oh, he said such and such, and then because of that, this guy gets reported to do that and that. Oh, right. It's that close, basically. You can almost put a like a storyline thing together, some storybook thing together from this guy's over there, he comes back and he says this, and then because of that, this guy goes over there and he does that, blah blah blah. You can basically map it all out.
I want to
That's how close it got.
I want to ask you this because last time we talked, we went through like the slideshow. You had photos of the fingerprints, the guy holding them up, and the one behind him. We went through all that, but every author, every researcher, everyone that ends up writing a book, they end up having a specific angle that they go into and they talk about. But you kind of have nailed. I know we talked about Prayer Man your very first time on. We haven't really talked about it since, but you go at it from Oswald and trying to, I guess, show that he's not guilty and show that everything was kind of against him. I mean, do you know why you connected with that for some reason that you felt like you could have, I mean, you could have tackled anything, the New Orleans stuff, the communist angle, any of those
Oh,
other
okay.
types of
Well,
stuff.
well, in that case, that's pretty easy because it started with prayer for me. Okay, so 10 years ago, I put a multi-touch presentation together. It was part of my company, what I was doing back then. I'd started a company 2011, 2 years prior, and I just come off hot of the Olympics and things like that. And then I just like, well, you know what? I've got to do something about that's showing multimedia in a really snazzy way. I'm using, and the beauty of the app that I was using is called OmniTaps, still around. Um, was that it allows you to put pictures, videos, and PDFs in one window, in within one screen. So I just drag these things in, and I can basically enlarge them, play them, and so forth. So I did an application for that. It's still on YouTube somewhere. And I was going to quit after that. I just thought, like, you know what, this is for at that time, it was like PowerPoint on steroids. Okay. And it just basically shows, you know, the usage of all these different types of media and so forth. And by having a whole set of applications within that environment, you can do everything like a PDF reader, like a carousel or video players, large screen, etc., etc. So it's very simple and intuitive. So I used that, and then I thought, okay, I'm done. But then Prayer Man came along just before I was supposed to like say, okay, ding. And my opinion of Prayer Man was, if that's Lee Oswald, and I thought at that point, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's Oswald right away. As a photographer, looking at that photograph, I was like, that's somebody that really resembles Oswald right there and then. And I didn't know anything about it. And I started reading about it. And it was that thread at the education forum, the speculation forum, that basically, um,
It's gone to shit now. It's gone to
yeah,
shit.
it has. It's terrible. It's gone really interesting in a thread that Bill Kelly started, and I linked to as well. And it was about, I think it was called Oswald leaving the TSBD. And it was an old picture. It was a picture that was used for a few years, but it wasn't a really good quality picture. There was a better quality picture afterwards on from Robin Unger's website, and I think that came from the JFK box set, the movie, like on a Blu-ray disc, and they did like extra bits, blah blah blah, and it's from that particular box set, if I'm not mistaken. But from that picture in that thread, I knew right away that's Oswald. And then I started reading in that thread what certain people were writing, and Sean Murphy was the main guy actually behind it already. He and then a discussion started going. And what they did was they used deduction. That's what they did. They said, well, who's Prayer Man or who could be Prayer Man? That's what they did. They basically started looking at everybody, and then people started to get recognized, like Shelley, Lovelady. And there's one thing about the Texas School Book Depository, yeah. As a company, it was in a big building, but Texas School Book Depository employees basically was quite separated. First floor for the workers, yeah, and the second floor was office personnel. And then already on that same second floor were other offices. So you've got second, third, fourth, second, third, fourth floor were offices. Other staff that wasn't Texas School Book Depository, they were publishing companies as such. So what I'm getting at is that the amount of people that were working in that particular warehouse on that day. See, that's where it starts with, because we got this guy standing in the corner. You go, well, the first thing I would dismiss immediately is saying, well, people tried it and said, oh, it's a stranger. Well, I'm sorry. Have you ever worked in an office of some sort and you go outside watching a parade, you stand on steps, then you pretty much all people are like from that office. If that person is a stranger, especially standing in that corner, that's well weird. But the beauty of that was what really killed that off was a commission exhibit called 1381. And in that, all Texas School Book Depository employees are asked 6 questions compiled by J. Edgar Hoover. Thank you, J. Edgar, because one of them says, did you see any strangers while you were in the building before, just after, and during the shooting, blah, blah, blah? No, I did not. The only person that did was Denny Arce Garcia, and he described an encounter that was 45 minutes prior JFK came past with the motorcade route. So slowly things started to go into place, and basically it was just the deduction period element of it that got me into it. And I followed that debate. This was in 2013, really closely. Then in 2014, I was really busy with work, and I only got involved in like the last quarter of that year, because I worked my nut off and I took a break, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do some reading. And then I became member of RKC, and because I didn't just look into the bit like what they wrote in the education form, which was just a few of the statements, I thought there's got to be more material. And every time you look, you find more material, more and more and more and more. And then I thought, like, okay, but to me, this is not about Prayer Man anymore. Prayer Man to me is like icing on the cake, because it's much more about showing what actually happens, because there's so much material that's never been published before that should come out and basically paints quite an accurate picture of what was done. I mean, I'm almost gotten to a point where I can say, or I can almost say, like, well, I'm missing a document from them to them, because I've got that document there and I've got that document over here, but there's something in between that's missing. I know that for a fact, because otherwise that news from that particular document wouldn't have reached that document. That's the situation. It's gone that meticulous. Malcolm's archive was an archive that kept on giving. It allowed me basically just to create a sphere in the top of my head and just basically start plastering bits of puzzle in, and basically, oh my goodness, what's happening here? Oh yeah, I've got something about this. And it just starts coming together. And there's little stories within stories within this story. And something else, Robbie, I'm sick to death of all the speculating. If you're speculating, then at least, spend at least 10 years just studying it before you open your mouth and say, well, I think what happened was, because the amount of time wasted on that, you know, go to Washington, contact Washington, email the archives and say, I'm looking for such and such. What have you got? Especially now these days, it's like a walk in the park to do that now, compared to having to travel to Washington and go through an incredible, frustrating period of waiting for a cart with a few boxes of documentation
Well, there's
as
a large
such.
amount in the community of rehashing old ideas and just I've getting the points behind them, which was that people were saying, "Oh, in case new members come across, they see this forum and this thing." But I'm just like, yeah, but I mean, this has been going on for 60 something years, and I get it's a big conspiracy. It's not. I'm not trying to solve it. I'm just trying to show that from 63 to 2023, we know a hell of a lot more than we did back then. And to get the public to stop rolling their eyes at it. That's why I would call myself a casual researcher. I do a lot of research. I'm very interested into it. But at this point, I'm like, I wouldn't say the military industrial complex did it because then people go, well, okay, was that the whole CIA? I need individual names now. I'm at that point. I'm like, I need specific names. I need things I can back up. The only thing I can do is get the public in on the discussion, which is showing that, like, obviously an investigation is done by people. And this wasn't even really an investigation. It was more of a execution or a persecution a little bit.
My attitude is completely different to this. I mean, that's what you're saying is roughly what I did 10 years ago, or what I was at like. Because, in all honesty, if I didn't find Prayer Man, I would have stopped after the 50th right away there and then. I thought it was good to make that presentation, blah, 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 use that software, how to deal with all this type of material, a lot of big data, a lot of video, a lot of pictures, and so forth. And I thought, well, that's it, job done. And the only way would be basically to become more intelligent with the interaction of it, artificial intelligence, for instance, things like that. So, but I just thought, no, it's cool, blah, blah, blah. But then Prayer Man came. And the whole thing just started to change for me. For me, it's really simple. If Oswald's Prayer Man, then the entire deck of cards, that nice little tower everyone's been building, drops down. The whole scaffolding, everything just drops down. That's it. Now, I'm not going to be hanging about much longer once I achieve that, in all honesty. I'll be reading out of interest about things, but I don't see myself like being like as active as I have been now. So, although saying that, I just released this book, and I was like, oh, thankfully that's over. But I wasn't even finished with the sentence yet, and I was like, right, book number 2, and then book number
Mm-hmm.
3,
That's
and
how it
also hold
starts.
on a minute, book number 4 can also actually already
We
be
want
considered.
toasters and movie deals.
Wouldn't that be nice? No, I'm yeah. The thing is, I've got such a treasure trove of documentation. And about a week ago, I had a quick look through a couple of bags and just looked at the stuff, and I was like, it'd be wasteful just to put it online. It should be like put together properly and shown, and then and that's the thing I can do, and it's all photography related. I mean, Prayer Man started as a photo, so it's all photography related. The second, the third, and the fourth book as such. So
Why do you think in his interrogation he never mentioned that he was on the steps?
he did. He said was outside, watching the presidential parade. That's what he said. And James Hosey wrote that down during the first interrogation. And also, Will Fritz said in his interrogation notes, which weren't contemporary, but be that as it may, outside, in front, with Bill Shelley. How did Oswald know that Bill Shelley stood outside in front? How's that possible?
But how did he know that there were two people on the second floor?
What do you mean?
The African American people from statement
No,
from Jesse Gray.
that's in the domino room. That's the lunchroom on the first floor, in the back of the building. He saw two people. You see, when he went out there, this is what happened.
The whole Oswald and the whole first floor, second floor, sixth floor is the most confusing aspect to it.
Oswald comes down and goes via the second floor lunchroom to grab himself a Coke for his lunch. Then he goes downstairs and he's in the domino room for a bit. And he sees Jarman and Norman grab their lunches and go upstairs. And then Oswald makes his way to the front of the building and goes through the front doors and stands on that top step, not the landing, just the one below, right leaning against the wall as such. He's one of the last people that basically steps out. There's only a couple of people that came out after him, and that was Bill Fraser and Roy Edward Lewis. But that's how it goes.
So he brought his lunch out onto the steps.
He had his sack with him, and it had a bottle. He had a bottle, and he had his lunch. And with that sack and the bottle, he both put them down on the stairs. And there are photographs showing a bottle and a lunch sack standing exactly in front of the spot where prayer man Oswald stood as such. There's about 4 shots of them, and you can just see the top of the bottle, and in one of them you can see the bag and the bottle. It's all there, man. And with prayer man, that light, that reflection that comes from a bottle. You see, when you look carefully at the way the light goes, the sunlight, is that because Oswald the prayer man is standing in the shadow, but he also, because he has this bottle, he stands with his arms in his hands in a zone of what I call the zone of transition from shade to light. There's like this middle area, and that's what catches the sun, and that hits the bottle on the bottom of it as such. That's where that reflection comes from. I'm telling you now, if somebody comes up with the Viekman or the Darnell film and gives me a good scan and let me loose with artificial intelligence on it, we'll de-blur it, and I'll tell you, it's just end of debate. So, boy, wouldn't that be something?
Why do you think Prayer Man was so controversial? It was like one of the first things I heard about when I first researched. And
well, Prayer Man only became controversial 10 years ago. That's when because first of all, it irked a lone nut of scum. It's terrible. But then there's another thing. It also irks conspiracy theorists. That irks them too. Because the same with Prayer Man is also that there was no second floor lunchroom encounter. Simple as that. The encounter is added on after Oswald's first interrogation. They switch things over, and they do this really quickly. And in my book, I explain how this happens within hours, and that because of that, something else needs to be done, and that's that James Bookout needs to change his report, a co-report he made with James Hosty. He has to change that, do a 180 on 3 key elements that were just written up in his first report. It's just falsification. It's plain and simple. You know what? I'll tell you what, I'm not even a lawyer, but I'll tell you what, I would represent Oswald, not get him off. That's my boast because of the paperwork. When I see all these so-called mock trials and this, that, and the other, and all this, I believe, I think, shut up, just shut up. What's the paperwork say? What are the statements? Statements taken under oath. Don't care so much about video interviews and newspaper interviews. People can say whatever they want. The only thing I want to hear then is basically, are you confirming what you actually said in your documentation as such? That's the difference, and the weight of the evidence. And then, how long ago was that evidence? Was it within the same day, 2-3 days later, week later, 2 weeks later, when he's dead and buried? Doesn't make any difference anymore, does it? You can say whatever you want. All right, let's write that down. Boom.
How difficult was it for you? Because online you can easily source things where you can put a link for people to click and be able to do that. How hard was it for you to wrap that in a book to be able to back up some of the information?
The ebook, I made the references interactive. So you open up the ebook, click on it, takes you straight to the documentation, takes you to the pictures, takes you to the videos, and so forth. That book is what? I don't know, the ebook is bigger than the print book, but the print book is just over 417 pages. And let's have a look. And the ebook is slightly bigger. Yeah. 416. And with the ebook, like I said, everything is clickable. And then with the print book, instead of the links, I put a numbering system behind because I've got 3 chapters, so 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000, and numbered everything. And then on my website is a page dedicated that's in the miscellaneous section. It's called The Book, and people can click on that, and then you can basically have your phone and the book, and you just go right, yeah, right. It says 2024. Scroll it, yeah, click, tap, and it takes you to the document in question as well. I didn't want a source note, traditional source note thing in my book, because it's been a pet hate of mine. Like when you have a heavy book and you have to go backwards and forwards all the time, and then look in the back and go, right, yeah, okay. And then also a lot of the stuff these days is all online. So hyperlinks in normal on plain text in a book. It's just like, well, you're going to stand there and go tap tap tap. Come on, give it a rest. So I thought, no, you know what? I'll make a dedicated page on my website, and basically it takes every chapter. It's got its own separate numbering, and all the links are all there, and seems to work fine. So yeah, I'm pretty good. I had 2 links that were snapped, and I repaired that. Other than that, it's all cool in the gang.
Did you have any concerns about anything with the book, whether it was going to be distribution or anything of that sort?
No, here's the thing. I don't have much to live off right now, because I haven't been working much. And thought, you know what, I'm going to put it out on Amazon. And I don't know if I'm going to go to bookstores and stuff like that. Right now, I'm just waiting and seeing, actually, because, the book's only been out for a week, exactly. 8 days. This is day 8. And the ebook's been out a month before that, July 31st. I wanted it out so I can gain some traction before the 60th. I mean, I thought from a marketing point of view. And I think I've got plenty of new material to show for the average JFK freak, let's call it like that, for them to look into and basically to investigate. And you know what? I've had quite a few seasoned people already come at me and going, a lot of stuff that I never knew about and so forth. Okay, cool. The mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned. Um, I wanted to make an evidence-based book. That's the most important part. Look, Robbie, I'm not a writer. I can barely make myself uh, understandable because the
Shit, you
English is
can't
still
even
a
spell my name on my
yeah,
show
exact
right.
yeah. I'm Dutch, so although I speak English all day, every day in my sleep, and blah blah blah, but still, it's a second language. But I, I've never cooked. I mean, I might be the author of the book, but I don't consider myself a writer. I'm not somebody who just all of a sudden just ticks out 4 pages of Voltaire. So it's just not happening. But that for me, it was the evidence, and the evidence was starting to tell a story. And by putting it in a how you say, like a timeline manner, that's when it becomes interesting, because I mean it's daunting for an outsider. This is daunting, this book, because you're being confronted with a lot of people. It's like being a teacher and standing in front of a class of fresh students, and you don't know one of their names whatsoever, and you have to learn their names. Similar feeling like that you have to do, but you'll get used to it, and then slowly it just takes you through it, and it just shows you what all these people said and did. And I abbreviated it a lot as well, because some of the Warren Commission and the HSCA interviews, they're quite long, and I thought, oh my God, it's going to be huge. So I thought, no, I'll just focus on the key bits. So I basically just summarized bits, and especially with the guys at the 5th floor, there was so much material available. I thought, no, you know what, I need to compress this as much as possible, and that takes time as well. But I'm glad I did it. I'm trying
Well,
to put a concise picture forward, so to speak.
I appreciate the evidence-based thing because that's what I'm trying to do with my own little project I'm working on. But I was given advice, which was that people need that Hollywood style of things to really get hooked into it, and we're going to see
Tough
that with
shit.
the 4 films that are going to be coming out. I'm like, do we need that though? Like, I feel like with how much documentaries are interesting to people and facts, I think people just want the
I'll
facts.
leave that to the people that want to sex my book up if they want to, and they can sex it up in a really cool way. I'm all for it, but to me, it's That's not my game. I'm just saying, like, you know what? This is what happened. This is what I read. This is what I found out. This is what I heard. This interview and that newspaper article and that document and that HSCA commission, blah blah blah, etc. Warren Commission, etc. etc. AARB. Yeah, this says all about this particular case on this segment of that case. That's all that's what's being said, such and such. Now something that a script writer will go, right, we're gonna squeeze all that together and it turns into one thing, and that's fine by me. As long as the core message that comes with that stays in it. I mean, it's understandable. So but this is the problem with JFK documentaries. I mean, I love the Stone documentary with Jim Eugenio, because the four times 3 hours or four
No,
times two
there's a
hours
2.5 hour version, then there's the 4 hour version.
Okay, so 4 hours. I'm telling you now, 4 hours wasn't enough. It should have been 20 hours. Okay, he should have done it like I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's called World at War. If you go on YouTube, you'll probably find it. And this is narrated by Alec Guinness, and this is about the Second World War. And it was 50 episodes, and it was 45 minutes to an hour long each episode. And it's proper if you want to know about Second World War, because every episode's a different subject. So, and with all the archival footage and then the narration of Sir Alec Guinness on it, it's beautiful.
Yeah, but
Documentary porn.
people don't have the attention spans for that. I mean, even the 4 hours kind of. Yeah, have you seen Oppenheimer? I was in that thing for 3 hours, and I was like,
I haven't seen it
gee,
yet.
my
Not
legs
yet,
trying to walk
but
out
I
of that
will.
sucker. I was like, God damn.
I like the director; he's good. But so when I looked at that documentary, then I thought, oh my God, it's not long enough. It's too short. And the thing is also, I can stand in front of an audience and can probably talk for 10 hours straight about what's in the book. And even then, there's bits that I won't be touching. There's that much material. And that's my thing with the documentaries. Whenever you see these documentaries, everything is condensed. And, it takes an interesting person to try and find out and say, well, what was actually being said, And then a whole different picture starts to emerge. And that's where it becomes interesting. I've always had an interest in footnotes. I've noticed that, I've stopped reading fiction when I was, I don't know, 16, 17, something like that. I just stopped reading fiction. And I started reading books about the CIA or the Vietnam War, Israeli, Egypt War, things like that, Second World War, just read them. And they're mostly like fact-based. And then I always went like, well, where's this coming from? And then go to the back of the book and it's such and such and such. And that was pre-internet at that time. And then afterwards with the internet, you could start looking things up. Now it's just a matter of utilizing two together. That's why I did a digital side to the whole thing. Yeah. But there's going to be a special edition. I don't know when, but the special edition will be at first. We'll have images, more documentation in there, and probably also additional material if I come across some over the next year or two, and it will be added on.
Have you been reached out to by any media sources, not podcasters or anything like that, but actual media outlets to cover this?
Nah, the book's only been out a week, and I haven't really, and I've only done 3 podcasts. This is the 3rd podcast I'm doing. I'm going on a break, and then when I'm coming back, I'm doing some in Holland. I'm doing some work related to this in Holland while I'm there. And then after I'm coming back, end of this month, I'm going to be dealing with London. And then, and the States. I'm doing a presentation at Lancer. I've got 1 hour. So, hello, summarize all that book. Summarize this thing in 60 minutes. Thank you very much. So, but, I'll have to be really like bullet pointing and just, it's like basically being slapped all the time. Facts. So.
Did you have any parts in your book that you felt like you could have added on to? I'm sure there's always something you felt like you can look back.
Well, there's one bit that I already know I'm going to add on, and that's about Roger Craig. And that's because I came across in Malcolm's collection, it came across a 4-page Garrison investigation document on Roger Craig. And I totally understand. This document, I'm telling you now, this document is the cause for Craig getting into trouble. Because he basically pointed the finger to everyone and exposed things that were no business of the district attorney of New Orleans, but things in Dallas. So, no, this cost Craig dearly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not, oh, yeah, 100%, but no, he opened the book a bit too much. He started talking about things that you should have kept quiet about.
Yeah, well, he
So
was
that,
right. He was in the interrogation where
oh
he was
no,
brought in. Yeah.
I don't disown that at all. As a matter of fact, I'm totally with anyone who says like Craig saw Oswald leave from the depository, and he saw him later on in the DPD, the homicide and robbery. I'll tell you what, even better, and this is also thanks to the Blunt archive. I found a document from Jim Bookhout where he basically notices what's his name? Fuck. Roger Craig's entry inside room 317. Now, I never knew that document existed because Will Fritz disowns Roger Craig completely
Yeah.
during his Warren Commission. Oh, no, I barely know him, blah, blah, blah. No, he didn't get inside. He was only like out about between all the others, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. That's how it went. And I'm thinking, well, no, that's not the case if Jim's Bookhout notes you entering the room as such at not 5:15, not 5:20, 18 minutes past 5. And then I started looking back into the Garrison document from the 4-page that I've got. And that says that James Bookhout was there and noted his name in his notes. That to me, this is something I didn't know until a week ago, tells me then James Bookhout was taking notes during that particular interrogation, which is the third interrogation that after, or the second. Yeah, later that afternoon, it's the second interrogation. So because Hostie's already gone, there's never been any evidence of Bookhout taking notes, but now there is. So that's another find, basically, because of all that.
How
So
long
that
did
I will have to add at some point to the book.
how long did it take for Hostie's notes to come to light? I know you had me ask that question to Tom Samaluk about Hostie's notes being submitted
No,
at the
that was the Fritz notes. Yeah.
Fritz notes. Yeah. I mean, how long did those take the Fritz notes to come to light?
Well, the funny thing is this: when the Fritz notes came out, which if I'm not mistaken, is the end of '97, third quarter, roughly, and everyone was talking about that. Newspapers wrote about these Fritz notes. There are articles about it. But what nobody mentioned were the Hostie notes. Now, when I found the Hostie notes in Malcolm's archive in first week of Feb 2019, I still remember it. And I found a folder, and there was loads of photocopied pages of just really scribbles and notes. And I was like, what is this? I don't understand any of this. And then I realized that they were written on the back of Dallas Police affidavit paper. And I was like, right, those are notes written inside Dallas Police because, of course, he needed blank paper. So they had these blocks of blank affidavits. So you could just tear one off and say, right, fill this in. So he had the whole block and basically used the backside of it because they were blank. And then there is a document in there that basically looks like a pre-report, which is made by Hostie before he does a report together with James Bookhout. And that particular document was available about 6 to 8 months prior. Yeah, about 8 months prior. the Fritz notes were released, and no one combined it. No one knew about it. No one thought of like, hold on a minute, what's going on here? What's in this folder here? What's written down? Because what Hosty did was, and this is beautiful, because when he did his book, he started basically writing about what his movements were during that same period. So he said, after the interrogation, which is about 5 past 4 in the afternoon, Oswald's taken for a lineup, Helen Markham lineup, and Hosty goes next door within that office. 317 is another mini office. He goes inside that sub office, whatever you want to call it, and he looks at the Oswald evidence. Now, from this is what two massive things come forward: is that A, he uses that block of affidavit paper to write down all the bits of the address book and the names and all whatever was on him there and then. And that's the best giveaway that there was no Heidel ID amongst all that stuff at all at that time. Had there been, he would have shouted it at the rooftops. He would have given it to Fritz and Bookout, and they would have gone straight in there and go, what's this with this second ID, Sunshine? Start talking to us, blah, blah, blah. But of course, there is no ID, so you can't ask him about it as such. And that's where all that starts up. But going back to the document from Hosty. Hosty basically starts writing this pre-report, and then he writes that he had Coke for his lunch. Yeah? That kills off the second floor lunchroom encounter. Why is he going back for a Coke there again? There's no evidence of that whatsoever. What, he went there twice? 2 Cokes? So he took the Coke for his lunch, went downstairs, and then went outside to watch the P parade, the presidential parade. So that, in combination with the Fritz notes, somebody should have seen that, and they didn't see that. Now, I'm not going to claim like, oh, I'm the one, blah, blah, blah. But the importance, when I saw that particular document, I was shouting it out loud in Malcolm's place, which was an old solicitor's office, lawyer's office, and I was in the back, and I shouted through the entire building, basically. Gold, just basically when I read that, and I'm going, this is even more specific. This points to prayer, man. This is unbelievable. Then, by looking at that document, I look back at the flip book notes, because Fritz didn't write these notes during the interrogation at all. Hosty did, but not on that document, on that block note. No, he had like, when the detectives open there, they go in their inside pocket and they take their flip book out and they start making notes. So everything is done like words, just a word here, a word there, and then you can see that Hosty is basically starting to border all these bits, and they have absolutely no relation whatsoever. He's just sitting there. This is typical someone who's just sitting there listening and just put one word or one term in there and then just starts making a square or a rectangle around it and starts doodling as such. And that, in combination with the flip book and in combination with the interrogation notes, just brings you a really interesting story together. And it's not just the fact that the lunchroom encounter is destroyed in that interrogation already before it has been created. And then they are doing their best to hide all these notes to make sure that there's no contrary evidence to the contrary of the story that the Warren Commission comes out with. Listen, all this talk about conspiracy and this, that, and the other, it's really simple. You had a bunch of bureaucrats make all these reports put together. And then they'll go like, well, if this comes out, we're going to be
fucked
right at the Khyber. Yeah. So it's like, okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to lock it up till we're all dead. All right. That's a good idea. Job done. There's nothing conspiratorial about. No, we're going to just fix the case in such a way, and we're just going to hide it. And then that's it. And I don't know if the military industrial complex was part of it. I know they profited from it, but then again, Who didn't? Wall Street profited from it. Yeah, the army does.
Did you feel like through their notes that you were able to uncover a little bit more about the depiction of Oswald or who he was?
Well, who he was, that bit goes back to
The 10 years before?
the youth house thing. That comes down to that a lot. There is a little bit with regards Ken Biffle, because Ken Biffle knew about him back in '59 when he defected. The other thing I'm also mention is the fact that you have to look at it this way. Oswald gets arrested, not for Kennedy, but for Tippit. So he's a cop killer, first of all.
I have proof of that too. I found the in the Dallas History Matters collection. I found the DPD transcripts, and it was talking about the person who was at the phone or the ticket booth who called the cops, and the transcript talks about the conversation that she had with one of the police officers. She goes, "I think this is the guy you guys are looking for who killed the president," and the cop responds with, "We're looking for someone who killed Officer Tippit." So that's the proof in that document of that they were looking for a cop killer, not for the president.
Well, be as it may, the fact is that when you're a cop killer, you're persona non grata. No one wants to know you. So for starters already, when you come in there and you're roughed up, right? And your shirt's hanging off your shoulder, and you're being led past up to half a dozen TSBD employees, and then go, ooh, holy shit, Oswald shot a cop? What's going on here? I work with this guy, blah, blah, blah. Who wants to have any interaction with Oswald at that point, or want to know or admit they know him? Or, it's the same thing as Jack Ruby. When Jack Ruby shot Oswald, Jack Ruby knew half the police departments, and yet everyone, oh no, I barely knew him, no, I never saw him, barely this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. Just keep it off, keep it that distance.
It doesn't look good if cops are hanging out at a strip club.
Yeah, not just that, him going in and dropping off donuts and stuff like that. And just chatter, getting messages and chatter. That's how it worked. And it's the same thing as with Oswald. Nobody wanted to know Oswald the second he was as a cop killer. Because even if they say, look, well, he didn't shoot the president because he was standing on the steps with us, that would get you into real trouble. I mean, if you now look at Prayer Man and the people that were on the steps, there were 2 blacks on the steps. There was 1 Hispanic on the steps. And there was a young kid on the steps. And there's a few women. And the supervisor and another worker and Prayer Man. And the people that were in close vicinity, look at Buell Frazier. Buell Frazier got a real rough treatment right there and then in the afternoon. They picked him up. They put him in jail in Fort Worth. And then Gus Rose and his partner Stovall came and collected him. And they took him to DPD. And then they tried to shove a pre-made statement in front of him that he was a co-conspirator of Oswald. Now think about that for a second. This is what is this the way you do justice in Dallas? Here's a statement. Yeah, you fucker. Come on. Yeah, forget about it. Your life's over. Put your signature here and that's it. Job done. And just think about that for a second, where you basically sign your life away, literally, for some. And to think of that tactic. And then you think like, hold on, well, how are you going to achieve justice when methods like that are being exercised as such? Forget about talking about, the South, this, the South. No, for just basic principle. I mean, interrogations back then, really simple. Wolf Fritz would be the main interrogator. And then behind the suspect would sit another detective. And he wouldn't say anything. He would just sit there. And then Fritz would talk. Would he take notes? No. Would he record? No. But when it go to court, then Fritz would go to court and say, like, he said such and such on that thing, and he was such and such on that question, and he said such and such on that question. Oh, did he? Oh, right, okay. Let's call him Detective so and so who sat behind him. Yeah. What I just said with Fritz, is that all what happened? Yeah, that's exactly how it happened. Job done. There's no recordings. There's nothing. This is how justice is applied in the South at that time.
Well, we see what happens when someone doesn't follow that model, and that's Roger Craig.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
So I
He was
get it
being a
from
cop.
there. It's
He's being
yeah.
a good cop.
I mean, it sucks for. I mean, I'm not trying to rationalize what the other guys did, but if you look at Roger Craig as a good example of what happens when you don't follow orders and listen to the kind of control that was going on. I mean, Dallas PD was corrupt, but Roger Craig's life went to shit after that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I don't really delve into. I only delve into like the two elements of him seeing Oswald escape, and also by the meeting in the homicide and robbery. And I believe him because also he not only wrote it down in his statement for the sheriff's department, he also was interviewed for the Dallas Times Herald, and he was in the morning edition of the 23rd. And he had a big chunk with his story in there and then. I'm going, and everybody went, "Oh, he's a liar," and I thought, no, that doesn't rhyme with a liar, with somebody who has already made a statement for the sheriff's department already, and and it was a cop who stuck to it, and because of that, yeah, he suffered. He definitely suffered because of it.
Did
Yeah.
Malcolm Blunt write your foreword to your book?
Yes, that took. I had to twist his arm a little, but no, because he's not somebody who writes a lot things like that. But I said, look, come on, and he went like, okay, I'll do it. And yeah, he wrote me a nice piece, and I'm very happy with it. Um, Alan Dale helped me out as well. He wrote my back page, and I didn't have a I did most of it all myself. The editing I've had help. Alan Dale helped me, and my girlfriend helped me. And other than that, there were a few other authors I just talked. William Law, one of them. Um, Russell Kent as well. And they just went, Russell knew a lot about Kindle publishing. So he says, you need to do this, then this, that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, fine. And then, so that was really handy. And William Law, just from an author's perspective, because I tell you what, one thing that really did my head in was the editing phase. Took 10 weeks. I was like, fuck. The editing and also the publication of it, the publication element of it. So publishing an ebook is a total different kettle of fish than publishing a print book. So that changes everything from a layout perspective, size perspective, pages, and so forth. So you know what? It was all virgin territory. It was stressful at the time. I'm glad it's done. Next time I'll be wiser. And
Next
it was just,
time.
yeah,
Next
there will
time.
be
Already
next time.
talking about a next time.
Yeah, there will be a next time, because I'll tell you what, even though it's it is rewarding to be able, um
There's no rest for the wicked. That's all you got to say.
no, you know what, if I'm done with the material, I'm done. I mean, I don't think I'm going to write about
It'll drag you back
another
in.
another subject. No, I mean, what will be coming is JFK photography related bits. So there's still plenty of material that I can because of the value of the documents and the materials that I've got. Yeah, I can just keep producing about 2 or 3 more books, basically. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how this goes, and if it's an incentive to continue. And but I've got the energy to do so, and so forth. The beauty is that the documentation is already next to me, so to speak, and so we'll see. I mean, it'll be more like short chapters all combined. So several different aspects of several different films and what the documentation of that, what it entails, and the mystery surrounding this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. Again, with a lot of documentation that is not available online at all. I don't know why. Somebody else can try and find all that out, why it's not online, but I can't find them. And yeah, so I think like, yeah, it'll be interesting books for people to read that already have been watching, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 documentaries already over the years, and then basically just that knowledge element want to add on as such. That's the way I see it. So
I got to ask this final thing to you, but what's one thing you're thankful for out of all this, out of all your JFK research?
meeting Malcolm. Simple as that.
You got to still get me to talk with him at some point.
Yeah, well, yeah, we should. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll speak to him end of this month. And then I will probably know a day when I'm going over there. So I'll have a chat with him and then we can just set something up. And we'll just do it like that. Because on his own, you know what, Malcolm is really atechnical, so he doesn't give a toss about any of this stuff.
I understand it. You've been on half of these fucking forums. You'd be technical too. Hell.
Sometimes it's also a positive thing, you know, just to be able to say like, yeah, forums, stay away from them, and you know, so.
But I appreciate the work you've done, Bart, and I was really excited when I saw your book went up, because they've gotten to know you pretty well over the past 2 years, almost 2 years. And I know you mentioned it before the first time we talked, and through our other chats, you had mentioned, I don't really want to do it. I might do it, and then now we're here, and it's released.
Malcolm's fault.
Yeah, blame Malcolm. Thank you, Malcolm, if you're listening.
Yeah, no, I that's why. Yeah, I was saying fault between quotation marks because you know, I never thought I was, you know, back in middle of June 2022, I would have said no way. And then all of a sudden, you should do a book, and I was like, oh God, that's just why. And then because I was like, I'm going to take a break. I'm done with the papers, you know, whatever, blah blah blah, and got this instead. But, you know, so.
Last time we talked, you were in a hoodie, hair was a mess, and you were eating an apple. Now you got the button up, hair's looking good, and you got a microphone. Damn.
Yeah, upgrades.
That publishing money. No, but Bart, seriously, thank you again for talking with me.
Thank you for having me
on the podcast, and I look forward to listening to any other interviews you got out there about the book and everything. I'm very happy for you. I'm sure Rob is too. But where can people find your links, man?
My website is prayer-man.com. And my book is called Prayer Man, More Than a Fuzzy Picture. It's on Amazon, Kindle, and softback format. Hardback is not going to appear for at least a year or two, probably. So, you know, there will be something coming after, but it's going to be a while. I need a break for a bit. So,
everyone order the paperback. Get the paperback. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a nice book. So 10 by 7. So, and it's a really nice font. And I'm really happy with the way the lettering came out in print. It's a font that was given to me by my old tutor who passed away about 7 years ago. And he gave it to me because I was using it for something. And at that same time, I kept using it for my papers. And I thought, well, this might look good in print. And I did. It was a gamble. I did. But I'm really happy the way it came out as such. So, yeah. So yeah, the book and you know, the website is filled to the brim with God knows how many pictures and videos and stories, documents, and so forth. So it'll keep you pretty busy.
Thank you again, Bart, and thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank. Stay tuned for our next episode.